When I came home from my mother's funeral, I didn't expect to hear screams coming from my own basement. And I sure as hell didn't expect those screams to belong to my wife. Stay with me while I tell you what really happened that night. If this story hits you somewhere deep, don't forget to show some love, because what I'm about to share changed my life forever. I remember the weight in my chest that evening. The funeral had drained every part of me. My mother's passing felt like the last piece of my childhood being buried. The drive home was silent, the streets dark, the sky heavy with rain clouds. I just wanted to take off my black suit, sit quietly, and maybe feel my mother's spirit one last time. When I walked into the house, everything felt off. Usually, Amira would rush to hug me, even as a grown girl of 18. But this time, she just stood by the living room door, her arms folded, her face blank. "You're back," she said softly, her tone cold, distant. I frowned. "Where's your mother?" She didn't answer. Just turned away and went upstairs. Something about the silence in that house made my skin crawl. It wasn't the usual kind of quiet. It was heavy. I took off my shoes, loosened my tie, and that's when I heard it, a faint, rhythmic banging sound coming from below. At first, I thought maybe something had fallen in the basement. But then came the sound that froze my heart, a weak, desperate cry. Someone was screaming. I ran to the basement door. It was locked. I jiggled the handle, called out, "Hello? Who's down there?" The voice came again, faint but clear this time. "Darius." It was my wife's voice. My heart nearly stopped. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and forced the lock open. The smell hit me first, sweat, dust, and fear. The light flickered weakly as I stepped down the stairs, my hands trembling. And there she was, Imani, my wife, tied to a chair, her wrists raw from rope burns, her lips cracked, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked half-conscious, her head drooping to one side. When she saw me, she tried to speak but only managed a whisper, my name. I rushed to her, untying the ropes with shaking hands. "What happened? Who did this?" She tried to talk, her voice breaking. She found out. She knows everything. Before I could ask what she meant, her head fell forward. She passed out in my arms. I carried her up the stairs, yelling for Amira. She appeared at the top of the staircase, her face calm, her eyes hollow. "Amira," I shouted. "What the hell happened here?" She stared at me for a long moment, her voice almost a whisper. "She deserved it, Dad." "Amira," I shouted again, my voice echoing through the house. She didn't even flinch. She just turned her back to me and walked down the hallway, calm, silent, like nothing had happened. That coldness in her eyes, it wasn't anger. It was something darker. Something I didn't recognize in my own daughter. I turned back to Imani. She was trembling, her skin pale, lips dry, whispering something over and over. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. "She found out. She knows everything. She knows everything." Her voice broke into sobs, her body shaking violently. I tried to calm her down, but she kept repeating the same words until her voice faded to a rasp. "Imani," I said, shaking her gently. "Who found out? What does she know?" No answer. Her eyes rolled back, and she went limp in my arms. For a moment, the room spun. I could barely think straight. I lifted her, feeling how light she'd become, and carried her to the guest room. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the door. I laid her down on the bed, covered her with a blanket, and just stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew. The woman I had loved for 20 years. My wife. My daughter's mother. And somehow, the two of them were caught in something I couldn't understand. I sat at the edge of the bed, trying to steady my breathing. The house was dead quiet now, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. My mind wouldn't stop racing. She found out. What could Amira have discovered that would make her lock her own mother in the basement like that? I looked around the room, at the family photos on the wall. Imani holding baby Amira. Me behind them, smiling like a man who thought his world was solid. I remembered those nights when my mother would come over and praise Imani's cooking, saying, "Darius, you chose well. This woman will hold your home together." I'd believed her. I'd believed every word. My mother adored Imani. She said she was calm, respectful, everything a wife should be. I used to watch the two of them cooking together in the kitchen, laughing like mother and daughter. Those moments had felt eternal back then. Now, standing in that room, the air felt heavy with lies I didn't yet know. I brushed a strand of hair from Imani's face. Her pulse was weak but steady. She needed rest. I wanted to call an ambulance, but something in me hesitated. What would I even say? My daughter locked my wife in the basement. No, not yet. I needed to know the truth first. Whatever Amira had discovered, it had broken something sacred in her, and I needed to find out what. That night, as I sat beside my unconscious wife, I made a silent promise. I would uncover every secret buried under this roof, no matter how painful it was. By the time the first gray light of dawn crept through the kitchen window, I hadn't slept. Imani was still resting in the guest room, and the house felt like it belonged to strangers. I rubbed my eyes and went to the kitchen, hoping to find Amira, to get some answers, but instead I found her leaning against the counter, pouring herself a cup of coffee as if the world hadn't shattered the night before. I cleared my throat. Amira. My voice felt strange in the quiet kitchen, almost foreign to me. She didn't turn, didn't even flinch. She simply took a slow sip from her mug, eyes fixed on the steam rising in front of her. Can we talk? I asked cautiously, trying to find a foothold. She finally spoke, her voice low, controlled, almost rehearsed. What is there to talk about, Dad? I stepped closer. Amira, what happened last night? Why would you do that? She still didn't look at me. Her back remained stiff, her hands gripping the mug tightly. The silence between us was suffocating, tense like two strangers sharing the same room. I thought you should have known, she said finally, her words deliberate. You should have told me the truth, Dad. About her. About you. My stomach sank. My heart felt heavy with dread. She wasn't angry about being disciplined or grounded. No, this was something worse. She believed Imani had done something unforgivable. But what? I had no clue what she thought she knew, what had driven her to lock her mother in the basement. I tried to reason with her. Amira, I don't understand. What truth? What are you talking about? Her hands shook slightly, gripping the mug tighter, but she still refused to meet my gaze. You don't know. You should have told me yourself. I felt a cold knot form in my chest. My daughter, my little girl, trusted me with everything. And now, she had acted in a way that could have destroyed her mother, and I was in the dark about why. I picked up my phone, a thought forming. Maybe I should call the police. Maybe someone needed to intervene before this spiraled further. But then I paused. Reporting your own child? She could be arrested. She could end up in a juvenile detention center. My mind reeled at the thought. No, not yet. I had to understand her first. I had to know what she believed, what she had discovered, and what had pushed her to this point. Reporting her blindly would only tear our family apart completely, and I wasn't ready to do that. I set the phone down. Amira, we need to talk, I said quietly, trying again. But we'll do it the right way. No one else. Just you and me. She didn't respond. She just stared down at her mug, the faint steam curling into the air. I realized then that she had changed overnight. The girl I knew, the one who used to run into my arms, had disappeared behind a wall of silence, anger, and determination. And I understood something else, too. Whatever she had found out, whatever she thought Imani had done, it wasn't something I could force out of her. I had to uncover it carefully, quietly, and prepare myself for the truth, no matter how much it might break me. Imani was asleep in the guest room, her breathing shallow and uneven. I sat in the living room for a long moment, trying to steady my thoughts. The house felt heavy, like every wall was holding its breath, waiting for me to discover the next truth. I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait. I had to find answers. Quietly, I made my way to Imani's study. The door creaked slightly as I pushed it open, but I didn't care. Every step felt like stepping into a darker part of my life I had ignored for too long. Books lined the walls, neatly arranged. Her desk was tidy, but something in me told me to look deeper. I noticed a shoebox tucked behind some files. It wasn't labeled, and it didn't look like it belonged to the organized woman I thought I knew. My hands shook as I pulled it toward me, and when I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Inside were letters, neatly stacked but yellowed with age. I picked one up. The handwriting was unmistakable, bold, confident, intimate. My stomach sank as I read the first line. I can't stop thinking about you. I felt bile rise in my throat. Each letter told the same story. Secret meetings, stolen moments, whispered promises. And then I recognized the signature. Ezekiel. Zeke. My best friend since childhood. The man who had stood beside me at my mother's funeral that very morning, comforting me, speaking words of sympathy that now tasted like lies. I flipped through the letters, scanning dates. They went back 6 years. 6 years of betrayal hidden right under my nose, right inside my home. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the box. And then I saw the last letter. the one that made my vision blur. The words hit me like a hammer. We can't keep hiding this from Amira forever. I sank into the chair behind the desk, gripping the box as if it could anchor me. My mind raced. Amira must have found these letters first. That explained everything. Her silence, her coldness, the horror in her actions last night. She didn't act out of madness alone. She acted out of knowledge. Out of betrayal she couldn't contain. The rage that boiled inside me was suffocating, but it was accompanied by heartbreak so sharp it felt like my chest would split. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted completely, had carried on an affair with my best friend for years. And my daughter, my little girl, had uncovered the truth on her own. I held the last letter in my hands, staring at those words over and over. We can't keep hiding this from Amira forever. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I had been punched repeatedly, each blow tearing at the fabric of my life. Everything I believed about my family, about loyalty, about love had been poisoned. I clenched my fists and let the letters fall to the floor. The betrayal wasn't just between my wife and Zeke. It was in my home. It was in my daughter's eyes. It was everywhere I looked. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had to confront this. I had to uncover every layer of this betrayal, no matter how much it would hurt. The quiet study felt suffocating, but I didn't leave. I stayed there, staring at the scattered letters, feeling the weight of a life I thought I knew crumble in my hands. Imani stirred in the guest room just as the sunlight slipped through the blinds. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment they seemed unsure, fragile, like she had woken into a world she no longer recognized. I sat beside her, my chest heavy with questions, with anger, with disbelief. "Darius," she whispered, her lips trembling. Her voice was weak, but the weight of what I needed to hear pressed down on her. "Imani, we need to talk," I said carefully, my hands gripping the edge of the bed. I could barely meet her gaze. Every nerve in me screamed to yell, to demand, to break her down for what I had just discovered. She nodded slowly, swallowing hard. I had an affair," she admitted, the words cracking under the strain. "It was years ago. It ended a long time ago, Darius." I felt my stomach twist. Years ago? That was supposed to soften the blow, make it more forgivable? But it didn't. Every word only tore at me more. "Why? Why would you do this? With Zeke?" My voice was harsh, but controlled. I needed answers, not apologies. Her gaze dropped. "It was a dark time. You were working long hours, emotionally distant. I was lonely. I felt lost. Zeke, he manipulated me. I didn't know how to get out at first. By the time I realized, it was over. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw something. But I couldn't look at her. Not fully. I couldn't reconcile the woman I had loved, the one I had trusted completely, with the woman who had betrayed me so thoroughly. And the letters? The ones Amira found? I asked, my voice trembling now despite my efforts to stay steady. Her lips quivered. She swallowed and met my eyes briefly. "Because Amira worshipped you. I couldn't destroy that. I couldn't destroy her world. She loves you so much, Darius. I wanted to protect that, even if it meant hiding the truth from you." The words hit me harder than any physical blow. My daughter's love for me, the very thing that should have been a comfort, had driven her to do something unimaginable. My mind raced back to her face last night, the cold stare, the silence, the horror in her eyes. "Please, please don't hate her," Imani pleaded, tears brimming. "She didn't know what else to do. She thought she was protecting you. Don't hate her, Darius." I sank back against the bed, my body trembling. Betrayal had come at me from every side. My wife had lied to me for years, my best friend had deceived me, and my daughter had committed a crime that could have destroyed her mother. I couldn't even form the words. My mind swirled with hurt, with rage, with the impossible weight of the choices before me. I looked at Imani and saw the woman I loved, broken and ashamed, and at the same time, I saw the daughter I raised, determined and furious, acting on a truth I didn't yet fully understand. And in that moment, I felt completely torn. The people I trusted most had betrayed me, each in their own way, and the world I thought I knew had shifted into a landscape I barely recognized. I didn't know who to forgive. I didn't know who to save. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. I left the house without a word, still in my black funeral suit, my tie loose and my hands trembling around the steering wheel. The anger inside me burned hotter than any grief I had felt at my mother's funeral. I drove to Zeke's house, the roads blurring past as my mind replayed every betrayal, every hidden lie. When I got there, he greeted me at the door with that same fake, easy smile he always wore. Darius. Man, I'm so sorry about your mother. His words were hollow, empty. I didn't answer. I stepped onto his porch, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I know what you did, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You and Imani. Don't lie to me. Zeke's smile faltered for the first time. He glanced away, then back at me, trying to sound casual. I don't know what you're talking about. I pressed forward. Don't play games. The letters. The affair. I know. And Amira, she found out. She confronted you. He sighed, leaning against the doorframe like it was nothing, as if he could shrug away the pain he'd caused. All right. Yes. It happened. And yeah, she found out. 2 weeks ago. She came to me, said she'd tell everyone at the funeral if I didn't. I felt my blood boil. She threatened you? My daughter? You're sick. He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. Sick? No, man, you should be proud. She's got your temper. That girl of yours? She's fearless. Just like you. I saw red. Every nerve in my body screamed. I lunged forward and swung. My fist connected squarely with his jaw, and he staggered back, blood trickling from his mouth. I hit him again, harder this time, until he collapsed against the porch steps, groaning. You lied to me, I spat, fury shaking me to the core. You betrayed me, and you've ruined everything. Zeke coughed, wiping the blood from his lips, trying to laugh it off. But the damage was done. My fists weren't just pain. They were truth, the raw anger that had been building for weeks, for years, finally released. I stood over him, breathing heavily, watching the realization hit him that his charm couldn't save him now. I felt a grim clarity settle over me. Every bond one had trusted, my wife, my best friend, my own daughter, had rotted in secrecy. My life, the people I had held closest, had been built on lies. I stepped back, leaving Zeke gasping on the porch, and turned toward my car. I didn't look back. I drove home in silence, the streets empty and gray, my thoughts heavy with what I had learned and what I had yet to face. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Nothing could stay the same. I had to decide what to do with my family, what lines I could cross, and what kind of man I wanted to be in the ruins of the life I thought I knew. The weight of betrayal had settled over me, and for the first time, I felt the cold edge of control sharpening in my hands. I found Amira sitting on the edge of her bed, her knees drawn up, staring out the window at the gray morning light. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, the one she used every day, but it felt hollow now, like even the air in the house was holding its breath. I stood there for a long moment, unsure how to start. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, just stared at the empty street below. Finally, I spoke. Amira, we need to talk. Please. She didn't turn. Her voice was barely audible, trembling. I can't. I took a cautious step closer. I need to understand. I need to know why. She finally looked at me, and the walls she had built around herself cracked. Her eyes were red, wet, and full of fear and anger at the same time. The words came slowly at first, then rushed out in a flood. I found the letters, Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. In her drawer, in Mom's drawer. I saw everything. Every word. Every secret. I sank into the chair beside her, silent, letting her speak. I confronted her, she continued, her hands shaking. I asked her why she did it, why she betrayed you, why she betrayed our family. And she tried to justify it, Dad. She said it was a dark time, that she was lonely. But I couldn't. I couldn't accept it. I didn't want her to get away with hurting us. Her shoulders trembled. She swallowed hard, taking in a shaky breath. I wanted her to understand, to feel scared, to know how much she destroyed. I felt my stomach knot, the truth hitting me like ice. Amira, what did you do? Her tears started falling freely, hot and unstoppable. I locked her in the basement, Dad. I wanted to teach her a lesson. I thought you'd come back tomorrow. Not 3 days later. I froze, my mind spinning. Rage, yes, fury at what she had done, but also pity. Deep, overwhelming pity. She had acted out of love for me, twisted and fierce, but still love. She had wanted to protect me, protect the family, in the only way she knew how. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. I reached for her, hesitated, then pulled her into a hug. Her small frame shook against mine, and I could feel the weight of everything, grief, betrayal, fear, pressing into both of us. But as I held her, my eyes remained cold. Beneath the pity, beneath the sorrow, A part of me was already planning. Planning how to handle Imani, how to protect Amira, how to fix, or perhaps destroy, the tangled web that had been spun behind our backs. For the first time, I realized the full scope of what I was facing. A daughter who had taken justice into her own hands, a wife who had betrayed me, and a best friend who had lied with a smile. And I understood something crucial. The path forward would not be easy, and it would require decisions that could change everything. I held Amira tighter, feeling the raw mix of rage and pity, knowing that this moment, this confession, had shifted everything. The house was no longer just a home. It was a battlefield, and the war had only just begun. Imani woke with a feverish haze, and I knew I couldn't keep her in that house any longer. I bundled her into the car like a man who was both careful and ashamed, drove to the emergency room, and checked her in under a name that meant nothing to either of us. The nurses didn't ask many questions. They patched her wounds, gave fluids, and kept her under observation. I stayed long enough to make sure she was stable, then told the staff I needed air and walked out before they could ask me anything real. That night I did what felt necessary, and what felt like mercy and punishment at the same time. I didn't call the police. I didn't tell her family. I drove until the city lights blurred, trying to decide what to do with the pieces of a life that had fallen apart. When I finally climbed back into my own house, the shoebox with the letters sat like a small, malignant heart on the table. I set it in the backyard on a cold patch of concrete and watched each envelope curl and blacken as the flames licked through them. The smoke rose, acrid and cleansing in my mind, as if fire could burn away the truth and leave something cleaner behind. Inside, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my phone. Zeke's name was there, a ghost of so many years. I pushed delete on his number, then on old texts, then on messages I hadn't read in months. I wiped away his presence from my life in the barest way technology allowed, feeling the small, false comfort of erasing him from the contact list. I thought of my mother's face at the funeral, how pleased she had been with the life she thought I had. The deletion felt petty and powerful all at once. At 2 a.m, I found Amira sitting alone at the kitchen island, her face hollow with exhaustion and a kind of fierce sorrow. I put my hand on the table between us and told her, quietly, "We're starting over." But not as we were. She looked up at me with eyes that had aged years in a single night and nodded. No celebration, no relief, only a careful, guarded acceptance. The house felt empty and full of echoes, like a body that had been moved into a new room and still carried the old scent. Then the phone rang. Zeke's voice was on the line, oily and confident, as if he owned the world. He said he knew what had happened, that he could make it worse, that he would tell the police everything unless I made him stop. I listened to the threat, the bravado, the way he tried to wrap power around his fear. When he finished, I was quiet a long time. My thumb hovered over the end call button, and I felt something inside me harden into resolve. "You won't live long enough to," I said, my voice flat and steady, the words not a promise of action laid out in detail, but a line drawn in the night. Then I ended the call. The house did not feel like a home that night. It felt like a place where decisions were being made that could not be undone. I sat at the kitchen table until dawn, watching the pale light take the edges off the room, knowing that whatever came next would demand more from me than grief or anger. It would demand choices that would change every life in that house. The next morning, the news came like a distant thunder. Zeke's car had been found at the bottom of a ravine. Authorities called it an accident, a tragic misstep on a winding road. I didn't speak a word. I just listened to the reporters speculate, the neighbors whisper, and the city hum along as if nothing had happened. Inside, I felt a hollow, cold satisfaction, tempered by the knowledge that the chaos of the past days was far from over. Imani returned home later that afternoon, discharged from the hospital. She was fragile, weak, and broken in ways that went beyond the physical. Her hair was damp from the hospital shower, her skin pallid, and every movement seemed to cost her effort. She leaned heavily on her arms as I helped her into the living room, and I could feel the weight of years of betrayal pressing down on her, a heaviness that no apology could lift. Amira sat across the room, her small hands twisting nervously in her lap. She had come to speak, to bridge the gap between them, and yet the words she offered carried only a shallow promise of reconciliation. I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice soft and uncertain. Imani looked at her, and for a moment I thought something like relief might pass between them. But the look in her eyes betrayed the truth. The forgiveness was hollow. It floated there, empty and tentative, a fragile attempt to mend a wound that might never fully close. I watched them both from the kitchen, my silhouette dark against the morning light streaming in through the windows. I felt like a ghost in my own home, detached from the conversation, from the fragile attempts at healing, from the living bodies that now shared a house but no longer shared trust. My chest ached with grief, anger, and a kind of dark satisfaction that mingled uneasily. Every bond one had depended on had cracked, some irreparably. Even as they spoke quietly, attempting to rebuild what had been shattered, the house carried the weight of what had happened. The walls seemed to breathe with unspoken secrets, the floors groaned under the tension, and the air smelled faintly of burnt paper and bitter memories. That night, as the house settled into a tense silence, Imani approached me in the dim kitchen. Her steps were cautious, hesitant, and when she spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Darius, did you do it?" she asked, her eyes searching mine for the truth she might not want to know. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the fragility of the woman who had once been the center of my life. But I said nothing. Words were useless now. Actions had been taken, and consequences were already in motion. I moved to the counter, poured myself another drink, and took it in silence. The glass felt heavy, the liquid cold and bitter. I drank slowly, letting it burn down my throat, letting the quiet of the house wrap around me like a shroud. Imani stepped back, uncertain, and I turned my gaze to the window. Outside, the world moved as if nothing had happened, oblivious to the fractures inside these walls. Inside, the house was still, haunted, and I was nothing more than a ghost among the living, watching, waiting, and knowing that some truths would never be spoken aloud. Weeks passed, and the house felt emptier than ever. Imani moved into her sister's home, leaving behind a hollow space that no amount of cleaning or organizing could fill. The bed she had once occupied remained untouched, the guest room a reminder of everything that had fallen apart. Amira started therapy, spending hours each week with someone who could help her untangle the anger, fear, and betrayal she carried. She refused to see me much, claiming she needed space, claiming she needed to rebuild herself away from the shadow of the family I had failed to protect. I tried to occupy myself, going to work, running errands, keeping the house functional, but everything felt like a performance. Each creak of the floorboards, each empty room, each echo of silence reminded me that the life I had known was gone. There were no more laughter-filled dinners, no more quiet chats over coffee in the morning, no more casual affection between the three of us. Only shadows remained. One morning, I found myself driving to my mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears and made your own thoughts sound loud and accusing. I knelt before the headstone, tracing the letters etched into the cold stone with my fingertips. "Mom," I whispered, my voice breaking, "you were right. Love doesn't destroy us, secrets do." I thought of all the lies, the hidden letters, the betrayal, and the chaos that had followed. I thought of my daughter, so young yet so capable of cruelty born from love and fear. I thought of my wife, broken and weak, hiding in a hospital room, a victim and a betrayer at the same time. I thought of Zeke, and the destruction his selfishness had caused. I stayed there for a long time, letting the wind brush against my face, letting the quiet settle into my bones. There was no answer, no absolution, no comfort. Only the weight of truth and consequence, heavy and unyielding. When I finally stood and walked back to my car, I felt the emptiness cling to me like a second skin. I started the engine, pulling onto the road, the city slowly waking around me. As I drove, I glanced into the rearview mirror. The man looking back at me was a stranger. The face was mine, yes, but the eyes, cold, haunted, distant, belonged to someone I barely recognized. I realized then that the family I had known no longer existed. We were scattered, broken, and irreparably changed. The trust, the laughter, the warmth, it had all vanished, leaving behind only shadows. When I pulled into the driveway, I stopped for a moment and just sat in the car. The house stood there, silent, empty, holding all the echoes of the past weeks. I stepped out and locked the door behind me, the sound sharp and final in the quiet evening air. I walked inside and let the silence wash over me. The house was quiet again, but now it was the kind of quiet that never leaves. Do you think Darius handled everything the right way, or should he have confronted his family differently? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious what you think. And if stories like this grip you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.